21st October 1805, off Cape Trafalgar on Spain's Atlantic coast. The battle mattered because it helped decide who would command the seas around Europe for a generation. For Britain, France and Spain, control of the sea meant trade, empire and survival. Trafalgar became a turning point because it ended any serious threat of a cross-channel invasion. Europe was already reshaped by the Napoleonic Wars, with alliances shifting and old powers under strain. At sea, the struggle was as much about blockades and commerce as cannon fire. Britain relied on a seasoned fleet and long experience at sea, while the Franco-Spanish fleet carried the burden of political pressure and hurried preparation. Both sides sailed with high stakes and imperfect certainty. The commanders were men shaped by reputation and responsibility. One side trusted aggressive initiative, the other hoped discipline, numbers, and a carefully chosen moment would hold the line. The fleets were floating cities of timber, rope, sailcloth, and powder. Every ship depended on weather, maintenance, trained crews, and the exhausting labor of hauling, trimming, and loading. Morale was uneven. British crews had confidence from experience, while the Allied fleet faced uncertainty, rough coordination, and the knowledge that a single mistake could unravel the whole formation. In the days before battle, the fleets moved through the Atlantic approaches off southern Spain. The final course brought them toward a coastline of shoals, currents, and changing wind. Cape Trafalgar itself offered little shelter. It was a place of open water and exposed horizons, where weather and seamanship could matter as much as numbers on paper. The morning brought a light, shifting wind and a long swell. Those conditions made maneuvering slow and difficult, especially for fleets trying to keep order under pressure. The Allied fleet formed a broad defensive line, aiming to keep the enemy at distance. The British approach was more daring, built around breaking that line and forcing close action. Each plan reflected different assumptions about risk. One side hoped to preserve cohesion, the other sought to disrupt it quickly, even if that meant sailing into concentrated fire. As the fleets closed, signal flags and visible movements carried urgent meaning across the water. On wooden decks, every order had to travel by sight, wind, and discipline. The opening phase was defined by approach rather than impact. Ships advanced in long arcs, trying to gain position while the sea and wind limited how fast the battle could unfold. Smoke began to gather as the first broadsides were exchanged at range. Even before the decisive moment, the battlefield filled with drifting haze and the sound of coordinated gunfire. The pressure point came where the British attack drove toward the Allied line's center and rear. That threatened to split the formation and isolate ships from mutual support. Once the line was pierced, the battle became a series of close engagements rather than one continuous front. Ships on both sides had to react quickly to changing gaps and angles. The decisive movement was not a single blow, but a sustained disruption of coordination. In naval combat, control of formation could matter as much as damage to hulls or masts. Some ships were pinned, others isolated, and many could no longer support one another effectively. The battle's momentum shifted as the Allied fleet struggled to restore order. The fighting was fierce but uneven, shaped by wind, range, and the ability to concentrate fire. In that environment, command decisions echoed across the whole line. As hours passed, the Allied fleet's cohesion weakened further. British ships pressed the advantage, turning tactical disruption into a broader collapse of organized resistance. Not every ship fought the same way, and not every part of the line collapsed at once. The battle remained a series of local struggles inside a larger strategic reversal. By late afternoon, the outcome was no longer in doubt. The surviving Allied ships were forced to withdraw or surrender, while the British fleet held the field at sea. The immediate aftermath was quieter but not peaceful. Crews worked to secure damaged vessels, care for the wounded, and bring order to a fleet that had just endured extreme strain. The sea around the battlefield was crowded with wreckage, drifting spars, and disabled ships. Rescue and survival became the urgent concerns once the guns fell silent. Trafalgar did not end the wider Napoleonic Wars, but it changed the naval balance decisively. Britain's command of the sea became far harder to challenge directly. In the years that followed, blockade and maritime power shaped campaigns across Europe. Sea control influenced trade, troop movement, and the reach of empire. For Spain and France, the defeat had strategic consequences beyond one day's fighting. It narrowed options, strained naval rebuilding, and reinforced Britain's ability to project power. Historians still debate the balance between bold tactics, weather, training, and command failures. Trafalgar is often remembered as a triumph of genius, but it was also a battle of conditions and systems. There is also caution in the record. Surviving accounts differ in detail, and modern historians weigh them against ship logs, reports, and the limits of eyewitness memory. The battle's fame has sometimes simplified its complexity. In reality, Trafalgar was the product of many crews, many decisions, and a chain of events that no single view can fully capture. Today, Cape Trafalgar is a place of dunes, surf, and open horizon, rather than cannon smoke. Visitors can still sense how exposed the coastline is to wind and weather. The landscape remains a reminder that the battle was fought in a living maritime environment, not a fixed arena. Sea, sky, and shoreline all shaped what was possible that day. A modern memorial presence and local remembrance keep the event visible, but the site still feels open and unforced. That quietness helps explain the scale of what happened offshore. Trafalgar endures because it shows how strategy, weather, training, and timing can reshape history in a single day. Its legacy is maritime power, but also human endurance under uncertainty. More than 2 centuries later, the battle still invites careful reading rather than simple legend. It remains one of history's clearest examples of naval decision-making under extreme pressure.